The mountain air off the Cascade Range carried the kind of cold that reached into your lungs and reminded you that you were alive. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Kellerman stood on the porch of his late grandfather's cabin, hands wrapped around a mug of black coffee that steamed in the pre-dawn stillness. The mug was chipped at the rim, had been for 20 years, but he wouldn't replace it. Some things you kept because they remembered when you couldn't. Ryan was 34 but looked older in the right light. 6'2", lean and corded with muscle that came from function, not vanity. His face was all hard angles, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, a nose that had been broken twice and reset once. His eyes were the color of slate, the kind of gray that shifted between storm and stone depending on what he was looking at. Right now, they were soft, tired, carrying the weight of things he'd seen in places whose names were still classified. He wore faded jeans and a thermal Henley, sleeves pushed to his elbows, revealing forearms mapped with old scars, some from training, some from operations he'd never talk about. On his left wrist, a simple black watch. No smart features, no connectivity, just time. He preferred things that didn't ask questions. Beside him, stretched across the weathered pine planks, was his partner, Thor. A 3-year-old German shepherd, 95 pounds of disciplined muscle and unyielding loyalty. His coat was classic black and tan, thick enough to handle the mountain winters, sleek enough to move like Shadow when he needed to. His ears stood erect, always listening, and his amber eyes tracked every shift in the forest, the rustle of a pine branch, the chatter of a squirrel, the distant cry of a hawk circling over the ridge. Thor wasn't a pet. He was a warrior. Explosives detection, tactical support, close quarters combat. He'd served 2 deployments alongside Ryan, sniffing out EDs that would have shredded convoys, guarding sleeping teammates in hostile territory, and, more than once, taken down threats that got too close. The bond between them was absolute, forged in chaos, tested in fire, unbreakable. Ryan set the mug down and crouched, running a hand over Thor's broad head. The dog leaned into the touch, eyes half closing, a rare moment of softness. "We earned this, bud," Ryan murmured. 2 weeks. No ops, no comms, just us and the quiet. Thor huffed, a low rumble of contentment. They'd arrived 3 days ago. Ryan had taken terminal leave, medical and mental health, the Navy called it, though he'd never used those words himself. The docs said he needed to decompress, reintegrate, process. He just called it getting his head straight. After 8 years as a SEAL, 4 combat rotations, and more close calls than he cared to count, the quiet wasn't a luxury. It was survival. The cabin sat on 40 acres of dense pine forest outside the small town of Ridge Falls, Washington. Population, 1,200. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where the diner served the same menu it had for 30 years, where trouble meant a bear in someone's trash, not bullets and blood. Ryan had spent childhood summers here, learned to fish in the creek that ran behind the property, learned to shoot tin cans off fence posts with his grandfather's .22, learned that silence wasn't empty. It was full of things worth paying attention to. He picked up the mug again and watched the sun crest the ridge, painting the pines in gold and amber. Somewhere in the distance, a woodpecker hammered at a tree. The wind carried the scent of cedar and earth. For the first time in months, Ryan felt his shoulders drop. The coil of tension that lived permanently between his shoulder blades loosened just a fraction. "Yeah," he said quietly, "we're gonna be okay here." Thor's tail thumped once against the porch. Agreement. Ryan drained the last of his coffee and turned toward the door. Come on, let's get some miles in before it gets warm. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. They ran the ridge trail, a narrow dirt path that wound through towering Douglas firs and across rocky outcroppings with views that stretched for miles. Ryan's boots crunched rhythmically on gravel. His breath came steady, controlled, the product of thousands of miles logged in every climate imaginable. Beside him, Thor moved with effortless grace, paws barely making sound, his gait smooth and efficient. This was their ritual every morning, 5 miles minimum. It kept Ryan's body sharp and his mind clear. It kept Thor's instincts honed. And it gave them both a purpose that didn't involve violence. The trail curved through a stand of aspens, their leaves shimmering gold in the morning light. A creek bubbled nearby, cold and clear, fed by snowmelt from higher elevations. Ryan slowed, letting Thor drink, then splashed water on his own face, the cold biting and bracing. He closed his eyes for a moment, listening. The forest was alive with sound, birdsong, wind through branches, the distant rustle of something small moving through underbrush. It was so different from the desert. No diesel fumes, no radio chatter, no fear coiled in your gut waiting for the world to explode. When he opened his eyes, Thor was staring at him, head tilted slightly, as if asking a question. Ryan smiled faintly. I'm good. Just thinking. T-Soar's tail wagged once. Reassurance given, received. They continued on, cresting a ridge that overlooked the valley below. Ridge Falls lay nestled in the trees, a cluster of rooftops and church steeples, smoke rising from chimneys. Beyond it, the highway stretched north toward Seattle, a thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through the wilderness. Ryan scanned the view with the practiced eye of someone trained to assess terrain. Choke points, sight lines, escape routes, old habits. He shook his head, forcing himself to relax. Not everything's a battlefield, Kellerman, he muttered, but some part of him would never fully believe that. They jogged back to the cabin, the sun now fully risen, the day warm and bright. Ryan showered, changed into clean clothes, and made himself a simple breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, more coffee. Thor got his meal, too, premium kibble mixed with ground turkey. The dog ate with focused efficiency, then settled on the living room rug, chin on his paws, eyes tracking Ryan's every movement. Ryan sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. 3 missed calls from his former team leader, 2 texts from his brother, 1 voicemail from his ex-wife. He set the phone face down without listening to any of them. Not today, he said quietly. Today was about peace, about healing, about remembering that there was more to life than missions and body counts. He leaned back in the chair, closed his eyes, and let the silence settle over him like a blanket. Outside, the wind whispered through the pines. Inside, for the first time in a long time, Ryan Kellerman felt safe. 30 miles north, in the town of Crestwood, Deputy Sheriff Laura Haines started her shift the way she always did, with a cup of terrible station coffee and a quick check of overnight incident reports. Laura was 31, compact and athletic, with dark brown hair pulled into a practical ponytail and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. She wore her uniform with quiet pride, navy blue, crisp and clean, her badge polished to a shine. She'd been with the Crestwood Sheriff's Department for 6 years, worked her way up from patrol to investigations, Earned her detective's shield last year. She was good at her job, thorough, relentless, the kind of cop who didn't let cases go cold, who knocked on doors until someone talked, who believed that justice wasn't optional. Her desk was organized chaos, case files stacked neatly, a framed photo of her late father in his own deputy's uniform, a coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Detective," a gift from her partner who thought he was hilarious. "Anything interesting last night?" she asked Sergeant Mike Torres, a stocky man in his 50s with a graying mustache and a perpetual look of mild exhaustion. Couple of drunk and disorderlies, noise complaint at the trailer park. Oh, and someone reported a suspicious vehicle near the old logging road off Highway 9. Laura looked up. Suspicious how? Black SUV, windows tinted, parked for several hours. Driver took off when the civilian got close. Laura frowned. Logging road's been closed for years. Nothing out there but abandoned equipment. "That's what I thought," Torres said. "Probably just kids looking for a place to party." Laura wasn't so sure. Her instincts, the ones that had kept her alive through 6 years of patrol work, were prickling. "I'll take a drive out there, check it out." Torres shrugged. "Your call. Just don't get stuck in the mud." Laura grabbed her keys, checked her service weapon, Glock 19, fully loaded, and headed for the door. As she drove north on Highway 9, the landscape shifted from suburban sprawl to dense forest. The road narrowed, hemmed in by towering pines, the pavement cracked and patched from years of neglect. She turned onto the logging road, her patrol SUV bouncing over ruts and potholes. The forest pressed in close here, the canopy thick enough to block most of the sunlight. It was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no wind, just the low rumble of her engine and the crunch of gravel under her tires. Laura's hand drifted to her radio. "Dispatch, this is Unit 12. I'm at the old logging road off Highway 9, conducting a welfare check on the suspicious vehicle report." "Copy, Unit 12. Be advised, you're about 15 minutes from backup if needed." "Copy that." She drove slowly, scanning the trees. After a quarter mile, she saw it. A black SUV, parked at an angle off the road, driver's door open, interior empty. Laura's pulse kicked up. She pulled her vehicle to a stop, killed the engine, and radioed again. "Dispatch, I've located the vehicle. Washington plates partially obscured. Running them now." She typed the partial into her mobile data terminal. While it searched, she stepped out of her vehicle, one hand on her sidearm. The SUV was expensive, new, the kind of vehicle you didn't abandon in the middle of nowhere unless something had gone very wrong. Laura approached cautiously, checking the interior. Empty, no keys, no personal belongings, just a faint chemical smell, something sharp, medicinal, chloroform. Her stomach dropped. "Dispatch, I need backup at my location immediately. Possible abduction scene." "Copy, Unit 12. Units en route." Laura drew her weapon and moved into the trees, following a faint trail. Broken branches, disturbed leaves, boot prints in the soft earth. She didn't see the man behind her until it was too late. The blow came from her blind side, something hard and heavy slamming into the base of her skull. White light exploded behind her eyes. Her knees buckled. The world tilted sideways. She hit the ground hard, tasting dirt and copper. Her weapon slipped from her fingers. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard a voice, low, cold, devoid of emotion. "Should have stayed at the station, deputy." Then darkness swallowed her whole. When Laura woke, the world was wrong. Her head throbbed with a sickening pulse. Her mouth tasted like metal and chemicals. Her hands were bound behind her back, zip ties cutting into her wrists. Her ankles were similarly restrained. She was lying on cold, damp earth. The smell of soil and rot filled her nostrils. Panic flared, but training kicked in. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to assess. She was in a hole, not deep, maybe 4 feet, but steep-sided, freshly dug. The walls were raw earth, roots dangling like skeletal fingers. Above her, she could see a rectangle of gray sky through pine branches. A grave. They'd dug her a grave. "She's awake." The voice came from above. Laura craned her neck, squinting against the dim light. 2 figures stood at the edge of the pit, silhouetted against the sky. The first was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing tactical pants and a dark jacket. His face was partially obscured by a black baseball cap, but she could see cold blue eyes, a square jaw, a scar running from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. The second man was shorter, wiry, with nervous energy that radiated off him like heat. He kept shifting his weight, hands jammed in his pockets, eyes darting between Laura and his partner. "Please," Laura rasped, her voice cracked and raw. "Please, don't do this." The tall man crouched at the edge of the pit, arms resting on his knees, studying her with clinical detachment. "Deputy Laura Haines," he said. 6 years with Crestwood Sheriff's Department. Decorated. Tenacious. They say you don't let cases go." Laura's heart hammered. "Who are you?" The man smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "You've been asking too many questions, Deputy. Poking around places you shouldn't. Following trails that were supposed to stay cold." Laura's mind raced. What case? She'd been working a dozen investigations, drug trafficking, stolen property, a string of burglaries. Then it hit her. The arms shipments. 3 months ago, she'd started noticing a pattern. Military-grade weapons showing up in local gang hands. Not just pistols, rifles, body armor, even explosives. The kind of hardware that didn't just fall off a truck. She'd traced serial numbers, cross-referenced manifests, built a timeline, and every trail led back to one name. Marcus Voss, private military contractor, former Army Ranger, now running a security consulting firm that moved cargo for clients who didn't ask questions. "Voss sent you," she whispered. The tall man's smile widened. "Smart girl. Shame it won't save you." The wiry man shifted nervously. "Cade, man, we should just finish this. Someone's gonna come looking for her." Cade, the tall one, stood slowly, brushing dirt from his hands. "Relax, Danny. Her radio's been silent for 20 minutes. Dispatch thinks she's still checking the vehicle. By the time they realize she's missing, she'll be 6 feet under, and we'll be halfway to the border." Danny pulled out a shovel. The blade was caked with fresh soil. Laura's stomach lurched. "You can't do this. I'm a cop. They'll find you." "Maybe," Cade said, "but you'll still be dead." He gestured to Danny. "Fill it in." "Wait!" Laura screamed, thrashing against her restraints. "Wait, please. There has to be another way. I can disappear. I won't talk. I'll leave the case alone." Cade shook his head slowly. "Too late for deals, Deputy. You made your choice when you started digging. Now you live with the consequences." He paused, then laughed. A dry, humorless sound. "Well, die with them, actually." Danny lifted the shovel, and that's when Laura heard it. A low, vibrating growl. Not human, not wind. Something else. Something that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. Cade froze, his hand dropping to the pistol at his hip. What the hell was that? From the shadows between the trees, two figures emerged. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, moving with the fluid grace of someone who understood violence intimately. And beside him, a German shepherd, 95 pounds of muscle and fury, teeth bared, eyes locked on Cade with predatory focus. Ryan, Kellerman, and Taish Orr had found her, and everything was about to change. The shovel hung suspended in Danny's hands, poised to dump the first load of dirt onto Laura's restrained body. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool mountain air. His hands trembled, not from exertion but from the weight of what he was about to do. "Come on, man," he muttered to himself. "Just get it over with." Below, Laura lay in the freshly dug grave, her green eyes wide with terror, chest heaving as she struggled against the zip ties cutting into her wrists. Her uniform was streaked with dirt, her badge catching the filtered sunlight like a small, desperate beacon. "Please," she whispered one more time, voice breaking. "Please don't." Cade stood with his arms crossed, watching with cold detachment. This was business, nothing personal, just a problem that needed eliminating. "Do it," he commanded, voice flat. Danny lifted the shovel higher, tilting it. The growl came again, deeper this time, closer. A sound that bypassed conscious thought and spoke directly to primal instinct. The kind of growl that said, "Predator." Cade's hand flew to his hip, fingers wrapping around the grip of his concealed pistol. "Danny, you hear that?" "I hear it," Danny whispered, shovel forgotten as he turned slowly toward the tree line. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no wind. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. Then they saw him. Ryan Kellerman stepped out from behind a massive Douglas fir, 20 yards away, moving with the controlled precision of someone who had breached 1,000 doors, cleared 1,000 rooms, neutralized 1,000 threats. He wore a gray thermal shirt that clung to his frame, faded jeans, and hiking boots caked with trail dust. His hands hung loose at his sides, relaxed, ready. His slate-gray eyes swept the scene in 2 seconds. The grave, the bound woman, the 2 armed men, the shovels. Threat assessment complete. Beside him, Tiege Orr stood rigid, every muscle coiled, hackles raised along his spine, lips curled back to reveal white fangs designed to crush bone. Ryan's voice cut through the silence like a blade. "Step away from the hole." It wasn't loud, didn't need to be. It carried the weight of absolute authority, the voice of a man who had commanded teams in firefights, who had given orders in chaos and expected them to be obeyed without question. Cade recovered first, years of training overriding the shock. His pistol cleared, leather, a Sig Sauer P226, professional's weapon, and came up fast, muzzle tracking toward Ryan. "Wrong move, friend. Turn around and walk away. This doesn't concern you." Ryan didn't move, didn't blink. "Last chance," he said quietly. "Put the weapon down. Step away from the officer." Cade's jaw tightened. "You deaf? I said walk away." "Can't do that." "Then you're as dead as she is." In the grave, Laura's hope surged. She didn't know who this man was, but the way he stood, calm, centered, radiating controlled danger, told her he wasn't some random hiker. This was someone who knew how to fight. Danny swung the shovel nervously between Ryan and Cade, trying to decide what to do. "Cade, man, we should just—" "Shut up," Cade snapped. His eyes never left Ryan. "I'm not gonna ask again. Turn around. Leave. or I drop you where you stand." Ryan's gaze flicked to the pistol, then back to Cade's face. "You're not going to shoot me," Ryan said, voice conversational, almost bored. Cade's finger tightened on the trigger. "Yeah? Why's that?" "Because the second you do, my dog tears your throat out, and you know it." Cade glanced at the German shepherd hadn't moved, but his entire body vibrated with coiled violence. Amber eyes locked on Cade with laser focus, a single command away from launching. The math was simple. Even if Cade got a shot off, even if he hit Ryan's center mass, Thor would cover the distance in under 2 seconds. And Danny? Danny was panicking, shovel shaking in his hands, no threat at all. Cade weighed his options. Then he made his choice. He didn't lower the weapon. Instead, he shifted his aim toward the grave, toward Laura. "Okay, hero. Here's how this works. You leave, or I put a bullet in her head. Then in yours. Then I deal with the dog." Ryan's eyes narrowed, the muscles in his jaw bunched. Laura saw it then, the shift, the transformation, the quiet, controlled civilian veneer stripping away to reveal the warrior beneath. The Navy SEAL, the operator, the man who had survived horrors and delivered worse. His voice, when he spoke, was different, colder, harder, surgical. "Thor, fasten. German command. Seize." Thor exploded into motion. 95 pounds of muscle and fury launched across the distance like a missile, closing the gap between trees and graveside in a blur of black and tan. Cade swung his weapon toward the charging dog, but Thor was already inside his guard. The shepherd's jaws clamped down on Cade's forearm with bone-crushing force, teeth sinking through jacket and flesh. The SIG clattered to the ground. Cade screamed, a raw, animalistic sound, and swung his other fist at Thor's head. The blow connected, but Thor didn't release. Instead, he wrenched sideways, using his weight and momentum to drag Cade off balance. They went down together, rolling in the dirt, Cade thrashing, Thor growling deep and savage, teeth locked, unbreakable. Danny stumbled backward, shovel raised like a club, eyes wild. Ryan was already moving. He closed the distance in 3 strides, reading Danny's body language. The fear, the hesitation, the amateur's grip on the shovel. No threat, just a scared kid in over his head. Ryan didn't draw a weapon, didn't need to. He stepped inside Danny's swing, caught the shovel handle with his left hand, and drove his right palm into Danny's solar plexus with precisely calibrated force. Not enough to cause permanent damage, just enough to empty his lungs and drop him. Danny folded like a puppet with cut strings, the shovel clattering away as he hit the ground, gasping, eyes bulging, unable to breathe. Ryan kicked the shovel away, then turned his attention to Cade. The fight was already over. Thor had dragged Cade away from the grave, jaws still locked on his arm, pinning him to the ground with focused, controlled aggression. Cade's face was white with pain, his free hand scrabbling uselessly at Thor's collar. "Get him off! Get him off me!" Ryan walked over slowly, crouched beside them. "Thor, O's, release." Thor opened his jaws instantly and stepped back, blood on his muzzle, eyes still locked on Cade, ready to attack again on command. Ryan looked down at the wounded man, his expression carved from stone. "Move and he finishes the job. Nod if you understand." Cade nodded frantically, cradling his mangled arm. Ryan stood, pulling a pair of flex cuffs from his belt, old habit, always carried them, and secured Cade's hands behind his back, then did the same to Danny, who was just starting to wheeze air back into his lungs. Only then did Ryan turn to the grave. Laura stared up at him, tears streaming down her face, chest heaving with adrenaline and relief and shock. Ryan knelt at the edge, his voice gentle for the first time. "You're okay now. I've got you." He dropped into the grave, the earth shifting beneath his boots, and carefully cut the zip ties from her wrists and ankles with a folding knife. Her hands were purple from restricted circulation, her wrists raw and bleeding. "Can you move?" he asked quietly. She nodded, unable to speak. Ryan lifted her easily, cradling her against his chest as he climbed out of the pit. Thor immediately moved to her side, pressing his warm body against her legs, offering comfort. Ryan set her down gently on solid ground, away from the grave, away from her would-be killers. Laura looked up at him, the stranger who had saved her life, and managed 2 words. "Thank you." Ryan gave a small nod, then pulled out his phone and dialed 911. "This is Lieutenant Commander Ryan Kellerman, U.S. Navy. I'm reporting an attempted murder of a law enforcement officer. Location is Old Loggin Road off Highway 9, approximately 2 miles from the junction. I have 2 suspects in custody. Officer is injured but stable. Send backup and medical." He ended the call and looked down at Laura. "Help's coming. You're safe." And for the first time since she'd woken in that grave, Laura believed it. 15 minutes earlier, Ryan and Thor had been a mile away, running the high trail that overlooked the valley. It was supposed to be a recovery run. Easy pace, clear the head, enjoy the silence. But Thor had other ideas. The shepherd stopped mid-stride, head snapping toward the northwest, ears erect, body rigid. Ryan stopped immediately. "What is it, bud?" Thor's nose lifted, testing the air. A low whine escaped his throat. Not fear, but alert. Something was wrong. Ryan trusted Thor's instincts more than his own. The dog had saved his life more times than he could count, sensing danger before it became visible, detecting threats that human senses missed entirely. "Show me," Ryan commanded, voice low. Teeth, or took off, not at a run but at a purposeful trot, nose down, tracking something Ryan couldn't smell or see. Ryan followed, hand instinctively checking the small Glock 43 concealed at the small of his back under his shirt. Old habits. They left the main trail, pushing through underbrush, Thor moving with absolute certainty. Ryan scanned the terrain with a practiced eye, sight lines, cover, possible ambush points. The operator in him never fully switched off. After half a mile, Thor slowed, his body language shifting from alert to aggressive. Hackles rose. A deep growl rumbled through his chest. Ryan dropped into a crouch, one hand on Thor's collar, listening. Voices. Male. Harsh. "Just fill it in, Danny. Stop being a damn baby." "I don't know, man. She's a cop. This is different from moving cargo." Ryan's jaw tightened. He moved forward silently, using the dense forest as cover, Thor matching him step for step. That's when he saw it. The grave. The bound woman in uniform. The 2 armed men. His tactical mind processed it instantly. Victim in immediate danger, 2 armed hostiles, uneven terrain, limited sight lines. Standard rescue scenario with complications. He could have called it in. Should have, probably. Let local law enforcement handle it. But the woman had maybe 60 seconds before they started burying her alive. No time. Ryan pulled his Glock, checked the chamber, round loaded, and clicked off the safety. Thor's growl deepened, reading the shift in Ryan's energy, understanding that they were going operational. "Easy, bud," Ryan whispered. "On my command." He moved into position, placing himself between the hostiles and any escape route, using the trees for concealment. Then he stepped into view. And everything that followed, the confrontation, Thor's attack, the takedown, unfolded with the brutal efficiency of a man who had done this work 1,000 times before. Now, standing over the two restrained suspects, watching Thor guard Laura like she was Pac, Ryan felt the familiar post-adrenaline clarity settle over him. Mission accomplished. Objective secured. No friendly casualties, but questions remained. He looked at Laura, who was sitting with her back against a tree, Thor's head resting on her knee, her hand stroking his fur with trembling fingers. "Deputy," Ryan said gently, "can you tell me what this was about?" Laura looked up, her green eyes still wet but clearing. She drew a shaky breath. "I'm investigating arms trafficking. Military weapons showing up in gang hands. I traced them back to a man named Marcus Voss, private contractor." Ryan's expression darkened. The name meant something to him. "Voss," he repeated. "Formerly Rangers?" Laura nodded. "You know him?" "Of him. Our paths crossed overseas. He was discharged for questionable conduct." Ryan's tone made it clear what he thought of that euphemism. "Last I heard, he was running black market logistics." "That's him," Laura said. "I got too close. Started connecting shipments to his front company. These two," she gestured at Cade and Danny, "were sent to clean up the problem." Ryan looked at the two men. Cade glared back with pure hatred. Danny just looked terrified. "You work directly for Voss?" Ryan asked Cade. Cade said nothing. Ryan crouched in front of him, his voice dropping to a tone that sent chills down Laura's spine. Not loud, not angry, just inevitable. "You tried to murder a police officer. You're going to prison for life. But if you cooperate, maybe, you get protective custody instead of general population. Your choice." Cade's jaw worked. Then, quietly, "We work for Voss. He gave the order. Said the deputy was a threat. Had to be neutralized." "Where's Voss now?" Cade hesitated. Thor growled, low and menacing. "Compound outside Bellevue," Cade said quickly. "Private estate. He's got security, cameras, the works." Ryan stood. "Good choice." In the distance, sirens wailed. Backup was close. Laura struggled to her feet, wincing as circulation returned to her limbs. She looked at Ryan, really looked, taking in the calm competence, the way he moved, the way Thor obeyed his every command with perfect precision. "You're military," she said. Statement, not question. "Navy SEAL, on leave." "You saved my life." Ryan's expression softened slightly. "You would have done the same." "I don't know," Laura admitted, voice cracking. "I was so scared. I thought I was going to die in that hole." Ryan met her eyes, and for a moment, the hardness in his gaze eased. "But you didn't. You're here. You're alive. And now we're going to make sure these bastards never hurt anyone else." Laura nodded, blinking back fresh tears. The sirens grew louder. Through the trees, she could see flashing lights. Ryan clipped the leash onto Thor's collar, more for appearance than control, and stepped back, letting the arriving officers take over the scene. But as the chaos of police response unfolded around them. Paramedics checking Laura, deputies securing Cade and Danny, crime scene tape going up. Ryan and Thor stood quietly at the edge of the clearing, watching, waiting, because somewhere in the back of Ryan's mind a cold certainty had taken root. This wasn't over. Marcus Voss didn't leave loose ends, and right now, Laura Haines was the biggest loose end of all. 2 patrol SUVs and an ambulance had turned the quiet logging road into a scene of controlled chaos. Deputies spread out, documenting the grave site with cameras and evidence markers. Paramedics worked on Laura, cleaning the raw wounds on her wrist, checking her pupils, wrapping her in a thermal blanket despite her protests that she was fine. She wasn't fine. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Sheriff Ben Cartwright arrived 20 minutes later, a barrel-chested man in his late 50s with silver hair and a face carved by 30 years of law enforcement. He took one look at the shallow grave, the restrained suspects, and Laura sitting on the back of the ambulance, and his expression went from concerned to furious. He walked straight to Laura. "You okay, Haines?" She nodded. "I'm alive, thanks to him." She gestured toward Ryan, who stood a respectful distance away with Thor, letting the professionals work. Cartwright studied Ryan for a long moment. The watchful eyes, the controlled posture, the dog sitting calmly at his side. He'd seen enough operators in his career to recognize one when he saw him. He walked over, extending a hand. "Ben Cartwright, Sheriff. I understand you're the one who stopped up this." Ryan shook his hand. "Ryan Kellerman. Just happened to be in the area." "Just happened to be," Cartwright repeated, skepticism clear in his tone. "With tactical handcuffs and a trained military working dog." Ryan's expression didn't change. "I like to be prepared." Cartwright almost smiled. "SEAL?" "Yes, sir." "Figured. Well, Mr. Kellerman, my deputy owes you her life. This county owes you. Whatever you need. A statement, witness protection, a damn parade, you let me know." "Statement's fine, Sheriff, but I'm not done yet." Cartwright's eyes narrowed. "Meaning?" Ryan glanced at Laura, then back at the sheriff. "Deputy Haines was targeted because she was investigating Marcus Voss. These 2 were sent to eliminate her, which means Voss knows she's getting close, knows what she knows." "So we arrest Voss," Cartwright said. "With what evidence? Everything Haines has gathered is circumstantial. Serial numbers, shipping manifests, suspicious patterns. A good lawyer tears that apart in pretrial, and Voss has very good lawyers." Cartwright's jaw tightened because he knew Ryan was right. "We need proof," Ryan continued. "Direct evidence linking Voss to the weapons, to the trafficking, to this attempted murder." "And how do we get that?" Cartwright asked, though from his tone he already suspected the answer. Ryan's eyes hardened. "We go get it." Before Cartwright could respond, Laura appeared at his shoulder, thermal blanket still wrapped around her despite the paramedics' objections. "He's right," she said. "Voss isn't stupid. By now, he knows Cade and Danny failed. He'll be scrubbing evidence, moving assets, preparing to disappear. If we don't move fast, we lose him." Cartwright shook his head. "You're not moving anywhere, Haines. You're going to the hospital, getting checked out properly, then taking a week off. Maybe 2. "Sheriff, that's an order." Laura's face flushed with frustration, but she knew better than to argue. She'd been a cop long enough to recognize when a battle was lost. Ryan watched the exchange, then spoke quietly. "Sheriff, with your permission, I'd like to take a look at Voss's compound. Just reconnaissance. Get the lay of the land. Cartwright studied him. You planning something I should know about, Mr. Kellerman? Just doing my civic duty, sir. Concerned citizen and all that. The sheriff barked a short laugh. Bullshit, but I appreciate you keeping me in plausible deniability. He paused, then added, You find something actionable, something we can use for a warrant. You call me immediately. No cowboy shit. Clear? Crystal, sir. Cartwright nodded, then walked away to oversee the crime scene processing, leaving Ryan and Laura alone. She looked up at him, frustration and gratitude warring in her expression. I should be the one going after him, she said quietly. This is my case, my investigation. I know, Ryan said, but you're compromised. Voss knows your face, knows your name, probably has your photo plastered across his security network. I'm a ghost. He doesn't know I exist. So what, you just walk into a fortified compound and snoop around? Ryan's smile was cold. Something like that. Laura shook her head. That's insane. He's got armed security, surveillance systems, guard dogs probably. You'll be spotted in 30 seconds. Ryan glanced down at Thor, who sat calmly at his side, watching the conversation with intelligent eyes. I've breached harder targets. This isn't Afghanistan or Iraq or wherever the hell you've been deployed, Laura said, voice tight. This is American soil. You can't just go full Rambo on a civilian compound. I'm not going to shoot anyone, Ryan said, unless they shoot at me first. I'm just going to look around, gather intel, maybe plant a few cameras. Laura wanted to argue, but she saw the set of his jaw, the determination in his eyes, and knew it would be pointless. At least, let me give you what I have, she said. Case files, maps, witness statements, everything I've compiled on Voss. Ryan nodded. That would help. She pulled out her phone, wincing as her raw wrists protested. I'll email you everything. What's your address? Ryan gave her a secure email he used for operational communications. Within minutes, her case files were transferring. Thank you, she said quietly. You already thanked me. Not for saving my life, for believing me, for taking this seriously. Her voice dropped. Most cops would have just written a report and moved on. You're actually going to do something. Ryan met her eyes. Voss tried to bury you alive. That's not something I can just walk away from. Something in his tone, the quiet fury beneath the controlled surface, told Laura this was personal for him. Maybe not the specifics, but the principle. The idea that someone could try to murder a cop and just get away with it. She understood that kind of anger. She carried it herself. Be careful, she said. Voss isn't some random thug. He's ex-military like you. He knows tactics. He'll be expecting retaliation. I know, Ryan said. That's why I'm bringing Thor. The German shepherd's ears perked up at his name. Laura managed a small smile. You two make a good team. Best partner I've ever had, Ryan said simply. He gave Thor a brief scratch behind the ears, then turned to leave. Ryan, Laura called after him. He paused. When you find evidence, when, not if, call me first. Before the sheriff. I want to be there when we take him down. Ryan considered this, then nodded once. You've got my word. He walked back to his truck, Thor trotting beside him, leaving Laura standing in the middle of the crime scene, wrapped in a blanket, watching him go. She had no idea what was about to happen, but she knew, with absolute certainty, that Marcus Voss had made a fatal mistake. He'd tried to kill the wrong cop, and in doing so, he'd unleashed something far more dangerous than any investigation. He'd unleashed a Navy SEAL with a personal vendetta and nothing to lose. The sun hung low over the mountains as Ryan and Thor stood on the steps of the Ridge Falls Community Center. The autumn air carried the scent of pine and wood smoke. Behind them, townspeople gathered, deputies in dress uniforms, federal agents in suits, families who'd been saved by the weapons seizure they didn't even know about. Sheriff Cartwright stepped to the microphone, his weathered face solemn. Today, we honor a man who asked for nothing and gave everything. A man who could have walked away but chose to stand and fight. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Kellerman showed us that heroism isn't about seeking glory. It's about doing what's right when no one's watching. Applause rippled through the crowd. Laura stepped forward, her wrists still bandaged beneath her dress uniform sleeves. She looked at Ryan, and her voice broke slightly as she spoke. 6 weeks ago, I was lying in a grave, waiting to die. I'd given up hope. And then this man and his incredible dog appeared out of nowhere. They didn't just save my life, they saved my faith in humanity. She pinned a medal to Ryan's chest, the sheriff department's highest civilian honor. "Thank you," she whispered, "for everything." Ryan nodded, uncomfortable with the attention, his hand finding Thor's head in a familiar gesture of comfort. When the ceremony ended, Ryan quietly slipped away from the crowd. Laura found him at his truck, loading Thor into the back seat. "You're leaving," she said, "heading back to the cabin. Thor and I still have a week of peace and quiet left." Laura smiled. "After what you've done, you've earned it." She paused. "Will you come back? To visit, I mean?" Ryan looked at her. This tough, stubborn cop who'd refused to let corruption win, who'd nearly died for justice. "Yeah," he said, "I'll come back." She handed him a business card. "My personal number. If you ever need anything, backup, coffee, someone to tell you when you're being too much of a hero, call me." Ryan pocketed the card. "Same goes for you." They shook hands, the simple gesture carrying the weight of shared trauma and mutual respect. As Ryan drove away, Laura watched the truck disappear into the tree line, Thor's noble head visible through the rear window. Sheriff Cartwright walked up beside her. "Hell of a man," he said. "Hell of a dog, too," Laura added. "You think he'll be okay? Going back to being alone?" Laura smiled slightly. "He's not alone. He's got Thor, and sometimes that's all you need, one loyal soul who understands you." Closing message. The mountains held their secrets, and the forest kept its silence. But sometimes, just sometimes, when injustice threatened to bury the innocent, heroes emerged from the shadows. They didn't wear capes or seek fame. They wore tactical gear and carried the scars of battles fought in distant lands. They walked on 4 legs and obeyed commands in foreign languages. They showed up when called and disappeared when the work was done. Ryan Kellerman and Thor reminded us of a simple truth. One person can make a difference. One act of courage can save a life. One decision to not walk away can change everything. In a world that often feels dark and broken, these warriors, both human and canine, stand as beacons of hope. They remind us that good still exists, that evil can be defeated, and that loyalty, courage, and honor are not just words, but actions. Deputy Laura Haines went back to work the following Monday, her investigation having exposed one of the largest illegal arms trafficking operations in the Pacific Northwest. 17 people were arrested, hundreds of weapons were recovered, dozens of lives were saved, lives that would have been lost to violence fueled by those stolen weapons. All because one cop refused to give up, and one SEAL refused to walk away. Marcus Voss is serving life in federal prison without possibility of parole. His organization has been dismantled. The corrupt officials he bribed have been exposed and prosecuted. Justice was served. But more than that, faith was restored. Faith that when evil rises, good will rise to meet it. Faith that warriors still walk among us, quiet and unassuming until the moment they're needed. Faith that a loyal dog and a determined man can change the world. Ryan and Thor returned to their cabin in the mountains. They continued their morning runs, their quiet evenings, their peaceful existence away from war and chaos. But they both knew, when the call came again, when someone needed help, when injustice threatened innocence, they would answer. Because that's what heroes do, not because they seek glory or recognition, but because it's right. You're absolutely right. I apologize. I created a completely new story instead of adding 5,000 words to the existing story you already had, the one about Ryan Kellerman, Laura Haines, and Thor. Let me add 5,000 words to the original story. Here's where I'll insert it. Between Section 12C, the final battle, and Section 13, justice served. The Coast Guard had escorted the MSC Beatrice back to port, but Marcus Voss sat in handcuffs in the ship's conference room, silent and defiant. Federal agents swarmed the vessel, documenting evidence, photographing crates, building their case. Ryan sat across from Voss, studying the man who'd tried to bury Laura alive. Laura stood behind Ryan, arms crossed, her green eyes boring into Voss with barely contained fury. "You're done," Ryan said quietly. "Your operation is over. Your men are in custody. The weapons are seized. It's just a matter of how long you spend in prison." Voss smiled coldly. "I want my lawyer." "You'll get one. But first, I want to know something." Ryan leaned forward. "Why Laura? Why go after a small-town detective when you had bigger problems?" "Because she wouldn't stop," Voss said, his composure cracking slightly. "Every other cop, every Fed who looked at my operation, they'd sniff around, find nothing concrete, move on. But her?" He glared at Laura. "She was like a damn terrier, wouldn't let go. 3 months of digging, following leads, connecting dots no one else saw." "So you tried to murder her," Ryan said. "I tried to solve a problem," Voss corrected. "In my world, problems get eliminated. Efficiently. Permanently." Laura stepped forward, her voice shaking with controlled rage. "In your world, you were a ranger. You took an oath to protect this country, and you turned that training into a criminal enterprise." "Don't lecture me about oaths," Voss snapped. "I served. I bled for this country, and when I came home, nothing. No job prospects, no support, just PTSD and debt. The military used me up and threw me away." "So you became everything you fought against," Ryan said. "I became a survivor. I built something from nothing. And yeah, I bent some rules, took some equipment that was going to waste anyway, sold it to people who needed it." "Gangs," Laura said. Criminals. You armed the same people we're trying to stop." Voss shrugged. "Business is business." Ryan felt disgust rise in his throat. He'd served alongside men like Voss, operators who'd lost their moral compass somewhere between combat zones and civilian life. Men who thought their service entitled them to break the law. "You're going to tell us everything," Ryan said. "Every corrupt official on your payroll, every shipment you've sent, every buyer. Or what? You'll beat it out of me?" Voss laughed. "I know the rules. I know my rights. I'm not saying another word without my lawyer." Ryan stood slowly, his shadow falling across Voss. "You're right. You have rights. But let me tell you something about the federal prison system. Those stolen weapons you sold, some of them were used to kill cops. Judges don't like cop killers. And inmates, they really don't like cop killers." Voss's smile faded. "So, yeah, lawyer up. Take your chances. But know this. Every day you sit in custody, word spreads about what you did. And when you finally land in general population at Leavenworth or Florence, there'll be people waiting who don't care about your Ranger tab or your service record. They'll only care that you arm the people who killed their friends." Ryan leaned down, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You wanted to bury Laura alive. Instead, you buried yourself. Think about that." He turned and walked out, Laura following. In the hallway, she grabbed his arm. "That was harsh? Yeah, but true. Voss made enemies of everyone. Criminals who got caught with his weapons, cops whose friends were killed, military personnel whose reputations he damaged. He's got nowhere safe to land." Laura nodded slowly. "Good." Agent Patricia Reeves found them on the deck, watching Seattle's skyline glow in the early morning light. "We've been through the first batch of documents from Voss's shipment," she said. "It's worse than we thought." "How much worse?" Ryan asked. Reeves handed him a tablet showing a spreadsheet. Names, dates, dollar amounts. "Voss's operation goes back 8 years. Conservative estimate, he's moved over $100 million in stolen military equipment, weapons, body armor, communications gear, even night vision devices." Laura's eyes widened. "Jesus, where did it all go?" "Everywhere. We've identified buyers in Mexico, Colombia, Southeast Asia, Eastern Europe, even some Middle Eastern countries. He was running a full-scale international arms trafficking network." "And no one caught it until now?" Ryan asked. "He was careful. Small shipments, legitimate-looking paperwork. He used his security company as a front. Everything looked like legal exports of commercial security equipment. By the time the gear reached its destination, it had been laundered through 3 or 4 shell companies." "What about the military personnel he corrupted?" Laura asked. Reeves's expression darkened. "We've identified 23 active duty and retired military members involved. Procurement officers, logistics specialists, warehouse managers. Some took bribes. Others were blackmailed. Voss collected dirt on people, used it as leverage." "How did he get away with it for so long?" Ryan demanded. "Because he understood the system. He'd worked within it for years, knew which forms to file, which inspections to pass, which officials to bribe, and he targeted bases with high turnover. Personnel rotated out before they could notice patterns." Laura shook her head in disgust. "All for money." "Not just money," Reeves said. "Power, control. Voss built an empire, and he would have kept building if you hadn't stopped him." Ryan looked out at the city. thinking about all the weapons Voss had put on the streets. How many people had died because of them? How many would have died if this shipment had succeeded? "What happens now?" he asked. "Now, we dismantle everything. Every shell company, every corrupt official, every buyer we can identify. It'll take years, but we're committed. This is a career-making case for a lot of people." "And the weapons that already shipped?" "Interpol is coordinating recovery efforts. Some will be seized, others are probably gone forever, but we'll do what we can." Reeves paused, then added, "There's something else. The Pentagon wants to debrief you. A breach this big, this long-running, they need to understand how it happened so they can prevent it from happening again." Ryan nodded. He'd expected as much. "When?" "They're sending a team to Seattle tomorrow, planned for several hours of interviews." "I'll be there." After Reeves left, Laura turned to Ryan. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About?" "About Voss. How someone can serve honorably, then throw it all away for greed." Laura was quiet for a moment. "My father used to say there are two kinds of cops, those who wear the badge to serve, and those who wear it to have power over others. I think the same is true for soldiers." "Maybe," Ryan said. "Or maybe combat changes people in ways they don't realize until it's too late." "Is that what you're afraid of? That you'll change? Lose yourself?" Ryan looked at her. "Sometimes I've done things in the line of duty that I'm not proud of. Things that were necessary but still haunt me. I worry that if I'm not careful, I'll end up like Voss, justifying worse and worse actions until I can't tell right from wrong anymore." Laura stepped closer. "You want to know the difference between you and Voss?" "What?" "When you found me in that grave, you didn't hesitate. You didn't calculate risk versus reward. You didn't think about what was in it for you. You just acted, because it was right. That's who you are at your core, and that's not something combat can take away." Ryan wanted to believe her, wanted to trust that the darkness he'd seen and done hadn't permanently stained him. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was still light inside him. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For reminding me why I do this." Thor appeared from below decks, having been entertained by Coast Guard sailors who'd fed him treats and let him explore. The dog trotted over and sat between Ryan and Laura, looking up at them expectantly. Laura laughed. "I think he's ready to go home." "Yeah," Ryan agreed. "Me too." 2 days after Voss's arrest, Ryan and Laura drove to Tacoma to meet David Chen's widow Michelle and their 2 children. Michelle was in her mid-30s, petite, with dark hair and eyes that held both grief and strength. Her son, Jason, was 7. Her daughter, Emma, was 5. They lived in a modest apartment, photos of David on every wall. Michelle invited them in, serving tea despite Ryan's protests that they didn't want to impose. "You're not imposing," Michelle said firmly. "You're the reason my husband didn't die for nothing." Laura shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Chen, I'm so sorry. If I'd known Voss would go after David." "You couldn't have known," Michelle interrupted. "David knew the risks. He told me he was scared, but he also said someone had to stand up. That's the kind of man he was." She pulled out a folder, handing it to Laura. "These are copies of everything David gathered. He kept them hidden in case anything happened to him. He wanted to make sure the truth came out." Laura opened the folder. Inside were shipping manifests, photographs of weapons crates, recorded conversations, even bank statements showing payments from Voss to corrupt officials. "This is incredible," Laura breathed. "This is evidence we didn't even know existed." David was thorough, Michelle said with sad pride. He believed in doing things right. Ryan watched Jason and Emma playing quietly in the corner, building with blocks, their innocence a stark contrast to the darkness being discussed around them. "Mrs. Chen," Ryan said, "the federal government is going to compensate you for David's sacrifice. It won't bring him back, but it'll help with the kid's future." Michelle's eyes filled with tears. "I don't want money. I want my husband back. I want my children to grow up with their father." "I know," Ryan said gently, "but David's information is going to put away dozens of corrupt officials. It's going to help recover millions of dollars in stolen weapons. His legacy is going to save lives." "Will you tell them that?" Michelle asked, gesturing to her children. "When they're older, will you help them understand their father was a hero?" "Yes," Laura said firmly. "I promise you, we'll make sure they know." Michelle wiped her eyes. "Thank you, both of you, for finishing what David started." As they drove away, Laura was quiet, processing the visit. "That could have been me," she finally said. "If you'd been 10 minutes later, my family would be having that same conversation." "But they're not," Ryan said. "You're here. You're alive. Because of you. Because we worked together. You did the investigation. I just provided backup." Laura smiled slightly. "Best backup I've ever had." They drove in comfortable silence for a while. Then Laura asked, "What are you going to do after this is over? After the trials? After the debriefings?" Ryan had been thinking about that question a lot lately. "Honestly, I don't know. I was planning to finish my leave, then figure it out. Maybe teach, maybe consult, maybe just disappear into the mountains and be done with all of this. Would that make you happy?" "I thought it would. Before all this happened, I just wanted quiet, peace, a break from the chaos." "And now?" Ryan glanced at her. "Now, I'm not sure quiet is what I need. Maybe what I need is purpose, connection, something worth fighting for." "You could stay here," Laura said carefully, "in Washington. Sheriff Cartwright wasn't kidding about wanting you on the team. We could use someone with your skills." "Are you recruiting me, Detective?" "Maybe. Is it working?" Ryan smiled. "I'll think about it. The Pentagon sent a team of 3 to Seattle. A full-bird colonel from Army CID, a Navy captain from NCIS, and a civilian analyst from the Department of Defense Inspector General's office. They set up in a secure conference room at the Federal Building, spending 6 hours interviewing Ryan about everything he'd observed, from Voss's operational security to his network of corrupt personnel. "Commander Kellerman," the colonel said, "in your professional assessment, how was Mr. Voss able to maintain this operation for 8 years without detection?" Ryan had prepared for this question. 3 reasons. First, he understood the system intimately. He knew which bases had weak inventory controls, which types of equipment were easily misclassified, which procurement officers were vulnerable to bribery or blackmail. Second, he was patient. Most thieves get greedy, take too much too fast, and get caught. Voss took just enough to stay under the radar. A few rifles here, some body armor there, nothing that would trigger major investigations. And third, He exploited the revolving door. Military personnel rotate every few years. By the time someone noticed irregularities, the people responsible had already PCS'd to different bases. There was no institutional continuity to connect the dots. The Navy captain leaned forward. What would you recommend to prevent this in the future? Better inventory tracking, real-time auditing, independent inspections by personnel with no ties to the bases being inspected, and, most importantly, take whistleblowers seriously. David Chen tried to report what he saw. He was ignored. That can't happen again. The civilian analyst made notes. We're implementing many of these recommendations already. Your insights are valuable. After the official interview ended, the colonel asked Ryan to stay behind. Off the record, the colonel said. Ryan nodded. What you did out there, stopping Voss, saving that deputy, that was damn fine work. The kind of work we need more of. Have you considered staying in? Staying in the Navy? Or transitioning to a civilian role with DOD, criminal investigations, security consulting? We have positions for operators with your skill set. Ryan considered this. I appreciate the offer, sir, but I think I'm done with the military world. Time for something different. The colonel nodded with understanding. I get it. Just know the door's open if you change your mind. We need good people. Always will. They shook hands, and Ryan left the federal building feeling like a chapter of his life was truly closing. He found Laura waiting in the lobby, scrolling through her phone. How'd it go? She asked. Long, thorough. They're taking this seriously. Good. They should. She stood. Come on. I want to show you something. She drove them to a cemetery on the outskirts of Seattle. They walked through rows of headstones until Laura stopped in front of one. Sheriff Thomas Morgan, 1954-2022. Beloved father, dedicated lawman, justice never sleeps. My dad, Laura said quietly. He was my hero growing up. Taught me everything about being a cop, about integrity, about never giving up, about protecting people who can't protect themselves. He'd be proud of you, Ryan said. I hope so. When Voss tried to kill me, he said it was because of my father, because Dad arrested his brother. For a while I was angry at Dad, like his cases had reached forward in time to destroy my life. But then I realized Dad did his job. He arrested a corrupt cop because it was right. And if I'd backed down, if I'd let Voss scare me off, I'd be dishonoring everything Dad taught me. She touched the headstone gently. So I kept going. And because I did, we stopped Voss. We saved lives. That's the legacy Dad left me. Not fear, not victimhood, but the courage to stand up. Ryan stood beside her in respectful silence, understanding that this wasn't just about a case or an investigation. This was about legacy, about honoring the dead by living with purpose. He sounds like he was a good man, Ryan said. The best. Laura smiled through tears. I wish you could have met him. He would have liked you. Yeah? Yeah. He always said the mark of a good man isn't what he does when people are watching. It's what he does when no one would ever know. You could have walked away in those woods. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. Neither did Thor, Ryan pointed out. As if summoned, a bark echoed across the cemetery. Thor had been exploring and had found a squirrel to harass. The German shepherd came bounding back, tail wagging, completely unaware of the profound conversation happening. Laura laughed, the sound breaking the solemnity. That dog has perfect comic timing." "It's a gift," Ryan agreed. They walked back to the truck together, the afternoon sun warming their faces, the weight of recent trauma just beginning, to lift. "Ryan?" Laura said as they reached the vehicle. "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For saving my life, for helping me finish the case, for reminding me why I became a cop in the first place." "You don't have to keep thanking me." "I know, but I want to." She hugged him. Quick, impulsive, genuine. Ryan stiffened in surprise, then relaxed, returning the embrace. When they separated, both were slightly embarrassed, unsure of the boundaries of their new friendship. Thor, sensing the awkwardness, pushed between them and sat down, demanding attention. They both laughed, grateful for the interruption. "Come on," Laura said. "I owe you dinner. A real one, not gas station sandwiches and vending machine coffee." "You sure? I'm probably not good company. I don't really do small talk." "Perfect. I hate small talk. We'll have big talk. About real things." "Like what?" "Like what comes next. For both of us." Ryan climbed into the truck, Thor jumping into the back seat, Laura sliding into the passenger side. And as they drove toward an uncertain future, 3 lives, forever intertwined by violence and survival, moved forward together. Not as victim and rescuer, but as partners, as friends, as people who'd seen the worst of humanity and chosen to believe in the best of it anyway. That night, over dinner at a quiet restaurant, Laura asked the question she'd been wondering since the forest. "How did you and Thor end up together?" Ryan smiled, one of the first genuine smiles she'd seen from him. "You really want to hear this?" "I do." Ryan leaned back, his hand unconsciously reaching down to where Thor lay under the table. 4 years ago, I was between deployments. The team needed a new K-9 for explosives detection. Thor had just finished training at Lackland. Top of his class, a perfect scores. Handler said he was the smartest dog he'd ever worked with. But he was aggressive, not mean, just intense. He'd been through 3 handlers already, kept washing out because he wouldn't bond. Trainers thought maybe he was too smart, too independent. Some dogs are like that. They're brilliant, but they need the right partner. So they assigned him to you? Not exactly. I volunteered. I read his file and saw something the other handlers missed. Thor wasn't aggressive. He was protective. He'd been bonding with his handlers, but then they'd rotate out, leave him behind, break that trust. So he stopped trusting. Laura understood immediately. He was protecting himself from being abandoned. Exactly. So when I took him, I made a promise. I told him, and I know this sounds crazy talking to a dog, but I told him I wasn't going anywhere, that we were partners, that I'd never leave him behind. And he believed me. Within a week, we were inseparable. Within a month, we deployed together. First mission, he detected an IED that our equipment missed. Saved 6 lives, including mine. Ryan's voice grew quieter. We did 3 deployments together. He's saved my life more times than I can count. Found explosives, detected ambushes, pulled a wounded teammate to safety during a firefight. He's not just a dog. He's my brother. Laura looked down at Thor, who gazed back with those intelligent amber eyes. That's why he disobeyed your command at the port, she realized. When you told him to guard the truck, he heard the gunfire and broke the command because protecting you was more important than obeying. Yeah, I should have been mad. It's a serious breach of discipline. But honestly, I was just grateful. He knew I needed him. Do you ever worry about him? About putting him in danger? Ryan's expression grew troubled. Every single day. He's not immortal. He can be hurt, killed like anyone else. And the thought of losing him, he trailed off. But you keep working together. Because that's what he was born to do. If I tried to make him a house pet, tried to keep him safe by keeping him out of action, he'd be miserable. This is his purpose. I have to respect that. Laura understood. It was the same reason she'd gone back to police work despite nearly dying. Some people, and some dogs, were built to serve. He's lucky to have you, she said. I'm the lucky one. Under the table, Thor's tail thumped in agreement. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to be reminded that heroes still exist. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know in the comments. What was your favorite moment? Was it Thor's loyalty, Ryan's protection, or the moment justice was served? We read every comment. God bless, and see you in the next story.